Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Well, not good morning, good afternoon. I take that back. I do apologize. I know we still have some people coming in, but we're going to go on and get started. And start on time. But welcome to Talk It Out Tuesday. And my name is Sierra, and here I have Miss LaDonna with me, and we are Angel Wings Outreach Center. We are a domestic violence shelter, providing services to victims of domestic violence. We are a source of help, a source of hope, and a source of strength. Our mission here at Angel Wings Outreach Center is to provide a place of safety to victims of domestic and family violence. Our program services are designed to connect to victims to the resources available to increase their safety, independence, and self-esteem.
Each Tuesday this month, we would explore one of the following topics. Good afternoon to everyone that's chiming in, that has chimed on. I forgot to say that at first, but good afternoon to you. Thank you for joining us. But as I was saying, each Tuesday this month, this is our third one, we will be exploring one of the following topics: mental, emotional, psychological abuse, physical violence in the gay and straight relationships, domestic violence in men as well. And also we will learn how to support a survivor. Our speakers for each week will share their knowledge and experience, and will also be available to answer any questions that you will have during this session. And we are going to kick off today, just going back, just reinstating what domestic violence is, what the definition is, just in case the first two Tuesdays someone missed it. You may say, well, they keep on talking about domestic violence awareness. Well, what is domestic violence? Well, I'm glad you asked, if you have asked. Domestic violence is a pattern of abusive behavior in any relationship. Any relationship. What type of relationship?
Any relationship.
So that could mean what?
Husband, wife and husband, girlfriend, boyfriend, girlfriend, girlfriend, even within your family. Mm-hmm. Any relationship, and it's going to be a pattern, mm-hmm. something that's continually going over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm. And that relationship, that's a pattern. It is used by one partner to gain and maintain control over another. That's what domestic violence is. It's a pattern of abusive behavior in any type of relationship that is used by the other partner to gain and maintain power and control over another.
Yeah. And like she stated, this is our third section. Of course, if you missed, our very first session popped off on the first Tuesday of this month, October the 4th, and we talked about what domestic violence was. We said what those different types of domestic violence is. We talked about physical, sexual, financial, spiritual, religion, and we also talked a little bit about verbal as well, mm-hmm. being that all these topics, they intertwine with each other. It's like, well, maybe I'm going through verbal, but in order to get through that verbal, you have some type of mental as well, mm-hmm. mental abuse going on as well within that relationship. That's what we talked about on Tuesday, on the first Tuesday.
Mm-hmm. And on our second Talk It Out Tuesday, we spoke about mental, emotional, and psychological abuse, which was given, our speaker for that day was Miss AJ Burks. She was with the Mississippi Coalition Against Domestic Violence, and she gave us some very good points and good information about what mental, emotional, and psychological abuse is and what it looks like, what the red flags are. And she also gave a prevention of how to steer away from those. And as Ms. Hayes said, how they all intertwine with each other. You can't have one without not having the other. And so that was a very good one that will go up later on. And this week we have some good ones for us, good speakers for us this week as well. And Ms. Hayes is going to let you all know who those speakers are. And it was so great to have them to give their time to us today.
Today we are going to cover all domestic violence as well. It's going to be within the LGBTQI plus community and physical as well. We have two young ladies from one of our shelter partners, our sister partners, not partners, one of our sister shelters, I'm sorry. And we have Miss Sandra and Miss Sydney. Okay, and Miss Sandra, she is the Assistant Director at the Domestic Abuse Family Shelter. She is 41 years old and she has worked with DAFS for 4 years. Mm-hmm. She is the mother of two. She has a son named Sydney and a daughter named Jasmine. And we're gonna give clap as Miss Sandra come on and talk to us.
Good afternoon, ladies. Can you hear me? Okay, great. We can hear you on our end. The sound quality is just a little low. It may be on our end. I'm not sure. Okay. So I am here to talk a little bit about narcissism. And so I'm going to start out with a definition of narcissism. Narcissism is a word that describes a pattern of thinking and a way of behaving. A person is not a narcissist. What that person actually has is a narcissistic personality disorder. And it's often referred to as NPD. Something very interesting that I looked up is that the University of Buffalo condensed a 31-year research on narcissism. And out of 475 participants, they concluded that men are more likely to have NPD than women. Now, that's also saying that both men and women can have it, but they concluded that it's more likely that men will have this disorder. So I wanted to talk about a little bit of the characteristics that a narcissist can have as far as their behavior. Normally they have a very arrogant or haughty kind of manner about themselves. They can come across as being conceited or maybe even boastful about themselves. They insist on having the best in everything, the best house, the best car. It's a self-image type of thing. They also tend to have an excess of admiration, all while disregarding anything about anyone else. Okay, so they lack emotional empathy for others. A narcissist do not feel bad when they hurt you. They may not even notice it. And if they do, it's very highly that they don't care. One more characteristic that I wanted to point out or mention is that they have an exaggerated sense of self-importance, or kind of like a sense of entitlement in any situation. Some of the things we just talked about are just a few characteristics of many of someone with narcissism behavior. Yet all what we just talked about can cause problems in different areas of their lives. Of course, we've all seen that. Some examples, though, that I wanted to mention how they can, cause problems in their lives is that in their relationships, just as you just said, whether it's their intimate partners, a friend, family members, co-workers, any place basically that is designed for them to be communicating with others. their behavior can have a negative effect on any relationship. So if someone that they have a relationship with was to point out any particular behavior that they were discovering about that person, because a narcissist person have trouble accepting blame or admitting that they're wrong, they normally tend to respond out of rage, maybe even turning the whole situation around to make it look like it's the other person's fault. And all of this is being done to make them appear more superior than others. So you can see how this type of behavior can affect their relationships on a daily. So I wanted to tell you a little mock story that can kind of give you an example about intimate partner that may have NPD that someone may be dealing with. So I'm going to name them Susie and Bobby. So Susie and Bobby are in this intimate relationship. They're at home, they're cuddling on the couch, they're watching television. Well, all of a sudden, Susie gets up and just goes to the kitchen and says, I'm going to fix something, to herself, she's thinking. So while she's gone, Bobby is thinking to himself, why'd she just leave me? Does she not care about me? If she cared about me, she wouldn't just be jumping up and leaving without saying anything. So he's getting more and more annoyed every time that he's, having these thoughts. So by the time Susie comes back with her snack or their snack or whatever, she's very confused by how Bobby is responding to her now. So she's now thinking, what did I do? Did I do something wrong? It really makes her question herself, or did she do anything? So Bobby says to her, you don't care how I feel. Susie, of course, is very surprised and didn't understand how he's feeling this way or what happened to make him feel like this. So they go on and they go to bed that night and they wake up the next day. Bobby's in a whole different mood. So he's trying to show Susie hugs or, show her love and give her hugs. And she's still upset about what happened last night. And so, Bobby goes on and he's trying to, throughout the day, offer her gifts and things of that nature. So people with this disorder, they tend to switch back and forth between alternative views. It depends on how they're feeling in the moment. Again, remember, they're not paying any attention about empathy for others and how they're feeling, or if they hurt their feelings or not. They tend not to apologize, even when they're clearly wrong. And that's when we were talking about how he would make sweet gestures and try to give her gifts to equivalent to an apology. Things of that nature kind of refer to love bombing, when they shower you with gifts to make it better. So I wanted to say this: you find yourself in a relationship with a narcissistic personality disorder. How do you, if someone had this question, how can you help someone with NPD cope or manage? Well, the first thing, this is some person that you're in love with, whether it's intimate or family or friendship. So you can definitely suggest that they go get help. That's the first thing. And so while they're getting help, if they take up you on your suggesting, you are to support them in their attempt, at least. Something else I wanted to mention is how can you, because a person that is the victim in that situation that are going through this with that person with dealing with NPD, they need to know how they can help themselves manage the situation. Okay, so the first thing that comes to mind is that they may need to educate themselves on the disorder. In that way, they'll be able to easier recognize symptoms and things that they can come to hand, that they can help them to cope all while helping themselves. This would allow them to better understand the person's strengths and weaknesses, also allowing the victim to kind of set boundaries in that relationship and also have more realistic expectations for that relationship that they're in. So you get to a point where you said, I've tried everything. What do I do now? How will I know when to move on from this relationship? You suggested your partner get help. You supported them along their journey. You set boundaries. You set more realistic expectations for the relationship. What do you do when none of that is working? Some people with this disorder can become verbally and emotional abusive. Some of the examples is name calling, insulting, public humiliation. That has happened to me before. Jealousy and accusations, blaming you for everything that goes wrong. And sometimes even monitoring your movements, isolating you from your family and your friends. A big one that I came across was giving you the silent treatment. That's a big one. So these are all things that you can recognize when you educate yourself and you're in this type of relationship, and notice these are not things that I want to have to deal with, and I've done my part in helping and supporting this person or this individual that's in my life. All these examples are verbal and emotional abuse, but these verbal and emotional abuse can quickly turn into physical abuse. So when it gets to that point, it's definitely time for you as the victim to seek help. So with that being said, I wanted to definitely give out our National Domestic Abuse Hotline. And that number is 1-800-799-7233. And also our DAFS line, our local domestic abuse family shelter here in Hattiesburg. That number is also 1-800-649-1092. Help is available. Please, someone speak to someone today if you're going through anything of that nature. We're always here to help 24/7. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Miss Sandra, for that. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And yes, like she said, within those things, being in that relationship with that type of person, that mental abuse, that verbal abuse, that psychological abuse, it can turn into physical abuse. And all of these are different types of domestic violence. So like I said earlier, even though we may say, well, we're just going to talk about mental today, but they all intertwine with each other. Mm-hmm. It's like Ms. LaDonna said, you can't have one without the other. I believe it's a possibility that you can have one without the other, but one can lead to different other types of domestic violence as well. So thank you so much, Ms. Sandra, for that. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, as we getting ready for our second speaker of today, that's Miss Sydney. Miss Sydney is the director of the Domestic Abuse Family Shelter. She has worked with this shelter for 5 years. She is a retired elementary school teacher after teaching for 25 years. She has a passion for helping people excel to be the best version of themselves and to help them reach their goals and aspirations. So give a hand of applause, those clouds, fingers, shouts, whichever one, for Miss Sydney. Thank you.
Sorry, we had to get it unmuted. And we're struggling to hear you guys. So can y'all hear me okay? Okay. Sandra and I chose to speak on narcissism and trauma. I'm going to be speaking on trauma bonding because those are types of abuse that are emotionally draining and can cause some mental health issues. And we have seen clients that have come through here that we know have been trauma bonded and have been under the influence of a narcissist, whether it be the abuser or another family member, as Sandra said. And I've really wanted to study more about trauma bonding, because we've had clients that would go back to their abuser, and I did not understand that. But trauma bonding, the definition, it occurs when a person is involved in a toxic or abusive relationship and forms a strong bond with and often idealizes their abuser. This emotional connection with an abuser is an unconscious way of coping with trauma or abuse. It is an unhealthy attachment that exists between an abusive person and the person being abused. With that being said, which I'm going to go through a little bit more about explaining it, made me understand that that bond that is formed between an abuser and the person being abused is real to them. It's almost like they become addicted to the trauma of what they've been through. How can you tell if one is in a toxic trauma bond? Trauma bonding is the connection of a person that forms to a person who is causing physical, emotional, and or sexual harm in a relationship. These types of relationships usually develop subtly and slowly over time. This bond creates a toxic and highly dangerous situation that continues to get worse and become more and more difficult to break. And as Sandra said, it escalates. It starts off so subtle, and you get love bombed and just preparing that person to trust them, the abuser, and then starts the subtle changes. When we talk about trauma bonding in relationships, we're usually talking about a situation where an abused person feels bound to their abuser by feelings of responsibility, love, compassion, and or guilt, and sympathy. And I've never, like I said, never understood why someone felt guilty or even felt love for someone that has abused them. But there are many cases that we've seen come through here where that's been the case. There might be a period of love bonding and closeness in the relationship, but these periods will alternate with episodes of abuse, whether it's physical, sexual, psychological, or some combination of these. The signs that a person is in a toxic relationship is there isn't mutual support between both people, and there's an ongoing or recurring conflict. One person tries to consistently undermine the other one. There is disrespect, such as name calling, being careless with the other person's possessions, and humiliation, among others. There is unhealthy competition and a lack of cohesiveness, such as not being able to rely on one another. Toxic relationships can be subtle and difficult to recognize. Like I said, it is so subtle when it starts that it is people of all walks of life, men, women, older, younger, that can find themselves in a relationship like this because it doesn't start off bad. It starts off actually very good. Examples might include throwing objects, putting a person down, attempting to control a person's relationships and behaviors, using vulnerability and apologies as manipulation, and causing a person to think the negative aspects of the relationship are their fault. And the manipulation, that goes hand in hand with both what Sandra spoke on and what I'm talking about. manipulating the person that they are abusing. Probably everyone has been accessible to someone who's narcissistic in their life, every one of us. And could have been, and some of us may have been trauma bonded before. This type of violence is not usually apparent until the relationship is solidly established. The abuser initially uses charm and skilled manipulation to win the person over and build a strong connection every time. Once the bond has formed, the abuser demonstrates controlling behavior that can turn into physical, sexual, or psychological violence, and uses a mix of continued manipulation by showing remorse, warmth, and more love bombing to keep the relationship going. Here are some signs of trauma bonding. The person becomes addicted to the emotional roller coaster of the relationship. When the abuser love bombs the victim, it feels more intense to them. The victim is relatively powerless compared to the abuser. The victim constantly feels ashamed, inadequate, and guilty. And the victim is always trying to be a better partner. How can one break the bond and seek help? It's always a struggle to leave a relationship that involves trauma bonding. It is common to feel love for the person perpetuating the violence. When deciding to leave a toxic or violent relationship, it is important to consider the safety of anyone vulnerable who will be involved, including children, as attempts and threats to leave can sometimes bring additional and worse acts of violence. The person leaving can call the police without the abuser knowing to gather belongings and safely leave the abuser. Call the domestic violence hotline to develop a plan to successfully break the bond and to find a safe shelter. The number I have is for the domestic violence hotline, because I don't know, I guess viewers that could be listening in could be from all over. The best number to call would be 800-799-SAFE, SAFE. Recovery from the psychological impact of a relationship with a traumatic bond can take a long time. The bond created is deep and complicated with scars that is difficult to break, even after leaving the relationship. Seeking help from a mental health professional, such as a psychiatrist or psychologist, is recommended to work through the traumatic experience, break the bond, and prevent mental health problems like PTSD. This healing can take years and can weave into other relationships and cause poor life satisfaction and long-term mental and physical health problems. I hope that if anyone is listening today that is possibly trauma bonded to their abuser or living with a narcissist will seek help, because it always gets worse. It never, ever gets better. So thank you for having us.
Thank you, Ms. Sidney. Thank you so much for that. We want to take out the time to thank you and Miss Sandra again for joining us today. Is anybody else having a problem hearing us other than Miss Sidney? Can y'all hear us pretty good? Yay, thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs up. Okay, okay.
Okay.
I just want, okay.
Okay, good.
And like Miss Sidney said, with trauma bonding, it is true. It is very deep and it's hard. Like it's easy for us to judge them that's, in that relationship. Like, oh, well, if it was me, I would be doing this, I'll be doing that, but you don't know until you are actually put into this situation and you are faced with these type of things. It's very difficult to get out of that relationship, and it's very hard for the victim to be like, to take that blame off of themselves, because that person has been telling them over and over, it's you. You're the reason why this. You're the reason is you. If you do this better, maybe I wouldn't hit you. If you did this on time, maybe this wouldn't happen. So for you to always constantly hear you, or maybe putting the blame on you, that's all you're going to know. You're going to look at that like it's true love. Well, if he didn't hit me, or she didn't put her hands on me, or she didn't belittle me or down talk me, that's not love. So that's not what I'm looking for. You're bonded off of that trauma. So thank you so much, Miss E, for that. The information was very good, and Miss Sandra as well. Like we stated before, all of these things, they intertwine within each other. No type is better or bigger than the other, because it can lead to one thing and have another thing going on. So thank you so much for that. We definitely appreciate it. At this time, if anyone have any questions for our speakers, you are free to ask those questions. The chat has been open throughout this Zoom. So as right now, there are no questions or comments in the chat. But if anyone feel like they want to unmute their mic and say something, add in, because I know we do have people outside of Mississippi joining in with us today. So a special thank you for that. So at this time, any questions, comments, concerns, please feel free to do that now.
I would just like to say, hey y'all, this is Z.
Yeah.
I just thank y'all again for inviting me and reminding me about it, because everything is kind of hectic, especially working at the shelter. But thank you again. It was very informative, and it's a good refresher for me to make sure when I do serve individuals of or victims or survivors of domestic violence, you'll have more understanding, as well as to be more patient and realize it's a lot of trauma behind them.
Yes.
Before they can get to the point to they be like, okay, we can heal from this, we can move forward. But the most key aspect is just being patient and really just being able to work with that person and understand what they're going through and what they have experienced. So thank y'all for the good refresher from me. And I look forward to the next one.
Thank you, Miss.
Thank you.
Yes, and she is also from another partner and shelter of ours. It's Catholic Church Charities. So I'm saying it wrong. Please correct me, but I feel like I said it right though. So, but yes, pass it on over to Miss LaDonna at this time.
And we also have our very own executive director, Miss Wendy Seals here. Miss Wendy, would you like to have any words before we get ready to chime off?
No, I enjoyed everything. Hey, Cindy.
Hey, Wendy.
I miss you.
I miss you.
How's everybody doing? Everything was real nice. I enjoyed the information. I have a question, but I'm going to do some research on it before I ask that question.
Okay.
Because I may be answering myself, but I really enjoyed it. And I'm like, is that Miss Z? The trauma bonding really is something I want to look more into, because it kind of connects, and you all can tell me that Miss Cindy and the young lady that spoke before you, what you think, but it kind of, when you all was talking, it kind of puts you in the mind of mental abuse as well.
It is.
So, okay. Well, that answered my question, and I don't have to chat that in there, put that in the chat. But it's so much, you'd be surprised. People think domestic violence is just physical, and that's it.
Right.
But you'd be surprised how serious it is. And that's why it's so important that we continue to stay out there and push and push and push the things that they can do to not get into a relationship like that. Because one thing that I learned well, I'm also a former victim of domestic violence, but one thing I learned by being here over 25 years is that all of the abusers, I feel, I tell a lot of victims that come through the shelter, and we call them survivors now, all of the abusers, their abuser, it seems like they all go to the same school. They know exactly what to do to get your attention.
Yeah.
And they pray.
Right.
They don't just pick you out. They study you, and they study women and young girls that are with low self-esteem and weak-minded. And that's why it's so important that we, as individuals, not only working in the shelter, but this needs to go on in your church and wherever you have a group of young girls to teach them, you know, how to feel good about themselves, how to have good standing for themselves, and don't settle for things that they know they don't want to settle for, because that abuser, I'm telling you all, they study you. They just don't walk up and say, okay, can I take you out? They be done studied you for about a month or two, and then they launch their attack. So we need to be very careful. It seems like every year we find out a new
Right.
domestic violence, but we need to be very careful and mindful. And if we have the opportunity to educate, and you can start that education at 15 now, might be younger, but I know you can at 15, educate our young ladies and young men, because women are doing it too. They are abusers too. So we need to start educating them
Yes.
on what not to expect, and educate them in a way where they will listen to us. So I really do appreciate you all for being on. I appreciate Miss Citiera and LaDonna for wanting to put this on. When they ran it by me, I was like, yeah, go right ahead with it, because the more information you get out there, the better it is. A lot of times we as people, the one that's being employed in the shelter, don't like our faces being seen, but I done got to the point now everybody know I run Angel Wings, so what difference does it make? So I trust God. That's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna trust God, but you gotta get out there, because you don't know who life you're gonna save. So I appreciate you all so much. Cindy, tell me the young lady name that's behind you, Miss Cindy.
Sandra.
Miss Sandra. I love Miss Becky, and I love the connection that we all have together. We can call on each other and make things work, right? So I just appreciate you all, Catholic Charity. I appreciate you. I appreciate the Miss Sarah, the administrator over there, the program director, Miss Sarah. We all have that connection where we can work together, and we working together will help save a life. So thank you all. I don't talk too much, so I'm done.
That's right.
Y'all have a wonderful afternoon.
You
Thank you,
too.
Ms. Wendy. Yes, like got a few more little things real fast before I let you guys go. First, thank you again for joining us, taking out the time on your day to join us. This coming up month, of course, is domestic violence, but on October the 27th here in Mendenhall, Mississippi, we will be having a balloon releasing for the victims and survivors of domestic violence in front of the courthouse here in Mendenhall at 5 o'clock. We will go live on Facebook, so if you are outside of Mississippi, don't worry about it. You already liked us on Facebook because you're here, so therefore I know you have that access. We will go live, so we're asking that you guys wear purple. If not, drop purple hearts. That's perfectly fine while we're doing this event. And that's coming up October the 27th at 5 o'clock. Also, again, from today's Zoom will be available to you guys to view again on our Facebook page. So we will upload this to our Facebook page, and we're asking that you guys meet us one more time this month, next Tuesday, for our last and final section of Talk It Out Tuesday. During that time, we will talk about how to support a victim, and we will also go do recaps from October the 4th, the 11th, today the 18th, and just give out more and more information about domestic violence. And also, I do want to give out this, the domestic hotline number is 1-800-799-7233. The domestic family abuse family shelter gave their hotline number. That number is 1-800-649 1092. And we also have Angel Wings as a shelter as well. So you have more than one place within the whole state of Mississippi to reach out. So if you can't get to the domestic abuse family, call us 866-847-5802. And you can send us an email at angelwingsoutreachcenter@gmail.com. And our line is open 24 hours. Correct me if I'm wrong, Miss Sydney, but I believe y'all line is open 24 hours.
Catholic Charities.
Catholic Charities as well, but she looks like she's a little busy right now.
Okay.
And I know the domestic hotline number is open as well, because I've called these lines for myself, so I can vouch for myself to make sure that they are open and available. So we have those sources out here. So I'm going to give it to Ms. LaDonna, let her close her out, and thank you all so much again for joining us today.
And that thank you, Ms. Hayes. The purpose of these sessions here is to make everyone can't make no one do nothing, but just at least alert everyone to be aware of the resources and the information that could lead to domestic violence and the prevention to keep from domestic violence awareness. So we want everyone that can and will, listen up, speak out, speak up, do whatever you can to help stop, because this is a horrendous crime. This just ain't no play. This stuff is real. It's real. There are those of us that are survivors. As Ms. Wendy says, she's a survivor. I'm a survivor. I know my cousin's on here. She's a survivor. And there are others that there are survival stories, but there are those that did not make it to this horrendous crime. So we want to all unite and join together to continue the fight to end domestic violence and keep those resources and that information out there. Again, we thank Miss Cindy and Miss Sharon, Sandra, I'm sorry for saying your name wrong. Would you forgive me for joining us and giving us your time and your information and uniting with us to stop this horrendous crime? And you guys, please, if you can, this time next week, join us to continue on this fight to bring this crime to an end, because we're gonna stop it. We're gonna stop it. We are going to stop it.
Amen.
Yeah, we're gonna stop it. Yes, by all means necessary, as they say, we're gonna stop domestic violence. So I want you guys to remember that Angel Wings is a source of help, a source of hope, and a source of strength. So until this time, next week, next Tuesday, you all have a blessed day, a blessed week. And send them purple hearts, because we stopping domestic violence.
Yes. Thank you all so much.
Beautiful. All right. Bye, Miss Cindy.
Thank y'all.
Bye, y'all.
My first lady joined in. Hey, Miss Pamela. I know you kept hey, Miss Pam.
All right.
Hey, cousin.
Hey, sweetie.
Thank you for joining us today. Thank you.
You're welcome. Be blessed.
Yes, ma'am. You too. Hey, Miss Pam.
Unmuted. I finally unmuted.
That's okay. Thank you for joining in, Miss Pam.
Hey, I finally figured out how to unmute myself. So I sweet. Okay. All right. Y'all have a blessed day.
Yes, ma'am. You too.